Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston. Today we're taking a look at Genesis chapter 20. And have you ever just found yourself committing the same sin over and over? No matter what you seem to do, you just always fell back into that cycle of sin. So after that story about the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, we get a beat for beat replication of the story back in chapter 12. Abram and Sarai at the time go to Egypt, and they tell Pharaoh that Sarai is Abram's sister, and Pharaoh takes her, and then God sends these plagues on Pharaoh's house, and then Pharaoh ultimately returns Sarai back to Abraham. That same thing is going to happen in Genesis chapter 20. It's exactly the same, right? Except this time it's with a king named Abimelech. Genesis 20 is all about a lack of trust and faith that makes it easy to justify sin and deception. And it answers one question: what does God do with people who don't know that what they're doing is wrong? Right? I think we've all had that question before, and Genesis 20 will have something to say about it. Now, Abraham journeyed from there towards the land of the Negev, and he settled between Kadesh and Shur, and then he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So Abraham just lies, just like he did in the story with Pharaoh. He just lies and says Sarah is his sister. At least back then, when he told it to Pharaoh, he didn't have an explicit prophetic word from God that Sarah would be the mother of his chosen promised son. What is Abraham doing here? God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she's married." Now Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, "Lord, will you slay a nation, even though blameless? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'?" And she herself said, "He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart, in the innocence of my hands, I have done this." And then God said to him in his dream, "Yes, I know that in the integrity of your heart you have done this. I also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. So therefore, restore the man's wife. He's a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, know surely that you will die, and all who are yours." So God intervenes with a dream to Abimelech and says Sarah is Abraham's wife, not his sister. And Abimelech is like, how am I supposed to know? He says the integrity of his heart, he's done this thing. With innocence of hands, he's done this thing. He admits he did a wrong thing, but it was out of ignorance. He pleads for God to not slay his nation, even though it's blameless, right? It sounds like word about Sodom and Gomorrah has kind of spread to the surrounding cities. And God says, I will hold you innocent as long as you do the right thing now that you're properly informed. And Abimelech does. So Abimelech goes to Abraham and he says, "What gives, man? That's not your sister." Look what he says in verse 9. Abimelech called to Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done things to me that ought not to be done." It says in verse 10, Abimelech said to Abraham, "What have you encountered that you have done this thing?" I love this question because it works on multiple levels. First off, Abimelech, in the purpose of the narrative, Abimelech is saying, "Abraham, have we done something to you that you would lie to us? Like, have you encountered some sort of sin that I've done against you that you would do this?" But it's also a reminder that, God has been with Abraham every step of the way and has always been faithful to him and blessed him, even when he didn't deserve it, even when he wasn't living by faith. So Abraham has encountered nothing because of God that would have led him to do this. There's no good reason why he should have done this, especially since it went so well the first time back in Egypt. This is what Abraham says. Abraham said, "Because I thought, surely there's no fear of God in this place, and they'll kill me because of my wife. Besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. Actually, she is my half-sister. And she became my wife. And it came about when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, 'This is the kindness which you'll show me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" So Abraham's lie comes from his assumption that the people around him do not fear God. And this really hurts me because how often do we not talk about God to other people that we see in our lives because we assume that they're not going to care or they're not going to be interested? Man, shame on us. I do it all the time. Abraham gives a really bogus excuse too that, oh, technically she is my half-sister and then became my wife. So it's technically not a lie. But he also reveals that they've been doing this everywhere they've gone. They've gone to a lot of different places so far, and they've done this everywhere. It's actually kind of amazing that they've only run into 2 people who tried to claim Sarah as their own wife. And it shows again that they have not been completely trusting God in every place God has called them to. And remember, that was God's first words to Abraham in chapter 12. And it also shows just how used to deception and to sin and to lying they are. You know, they've done it everywhere they've gone, so why would this place be any different? That's a really dangerous place to be when it's normal to sin and it's normal to lie and scheme and deceive, right? That is where all sorts of problems come from. With that being said, Abraham and Sarah are definitely not an ideal relationship. They definitely need more than a little counseling. And yet, this is the union that God has promised to bring deliverance from. God shows that he's intentionally using imperfect vessels to bring about his plan so that only he gets the glory and credit. Obviously, of course, there's the physical aspect of it, that they're imperfect vessels because they're so far past childbearing age. But there's also the emotional and spiritual and mental imperfections that show that this is only going to be because of God that deliverance comes through these 2 people. In verses 14 through the rest of the chapter, Abimelech and Abraham kiss and make up. All's well that ends well, I guess. This story is going to remind us that the relationship between Abimelech and Abraham and the descendants of Abraham is going to be built on a foundation of inherent mistrust because Abraham lied to Abimelech. And it's going to cause some tensions in relationships to come. And it all started with Abraham's lie because he didn't trust God. So we see in this little story that God has mercy on those who have integrity of heart and innocence of hands. Even when people do the wrong thing, but they don't know that what they're doing is wrong, I believe God has mercy on those people. Sometimes those people are even more godly than the people God has actually revealed himself to and made his plans known to. And Abraham and Sarah continue to show that they're trusting God in pieces of their life, but not in totality. Not when it comes to their relationship and the strangers around them. They're not trusting God in those relationships. And that lack of trust causes lies, and those lies cause sin, and that sin causes suffering, which causes generational tension, which causes more lies and more sin, right? It's all a cycle of what started back in Genesis chapter 3. When we completely trust God, we can break that cycle altogether. Problem is, it's hard to do. It's hard to trust God in totality with every relationship that we have in our lives because it's scary. But we have to know that God is sovereign and God wants our good. So when we trust him, that there's nothing that can get in the way of that. Thank you guys for watching. This has been 1189. Talked about Genesis chapter 20, and next week we'll be looking at chapters 21 through 25. And so that's going to be a good time. Come back next week. Thanks for watching, and God bless.